Hello, everyone, and welcome back to My Crochet Story. My name is Maureen, and today we are going to dive into my very first podcast. Yeah, that's what you can find here on Saturday's Reflections. Now, when I was trying to figure out a name for this new series that I wanted to instill on my channel, I was trying to come up with all sorts of catchy little things. I can't even remember what they were. They were so catchy. But at my age, I I decided catchy is just not me. Honestly, it's not. I'm old fashioned. I don't mind admitting that I'm old fashioned. So, reflections. And I do love taking a moment and thinking about things. Did I like something? Did I not like something? Am I willing to try something new? Just to take a few moments and do some self checkups. And that's kind of what this podcast is going to be about. And since I love crocheting, I thought, well, let it center around. Why don't we take a little bit of time each week together, you and just flat out talk about crochet, why we like it. Are we crazy about the new trends that are coming out? Do we just want to stick with the same old thing? Let's just sit back, for a little time and be honest with one another. Now, what I do want you to understand is that on Saturday Reflections, they're going to be Maureen's reflections. But I do encourage you to, as you're watching along, go ahead and share with me and with other viewers some of your own perspectives of what the topic might be. And today's topic I chose was, if it's going to be my first podcast, why not choose this one? But I'll get to that in just a moment. I want to share with some of you, if you are new today, a little bit about myself before we get into the rest of the podcast. I've been crocheting for over 50 years. Yep, my Grandma taught me how to crochet between the ages of 13, 14, somewhere along in there. And I took to it, folks, like a fish out of water. And she was so happy because initially she tried to teach me how to knit. Now, folks, those of you that know me know that I cannot do two things at once. And having both those needles trying to do this and whatever else they do, my brain could not wrap around that. Just like they can't wrap around when there's more than two pedals down on the floor, in your car. Yes, Maureen doesn't drive a standard either. So playing with those two needles at one time didn't jive in my head. And I tell you what, those of you that do knit with two needles, four needles at a time, kudos off to you, because I loved watching my Grandma knit. The the sound of the needles hitting one another, watching her throw that yarn around and hook and, well, not hook, but you know what I mean, whatever terms you knitters use. And I did want to learn how to do it, but yes, I was making a horrible mess. And so we put that aside. A couple of days later, she showed me how to crochet. And like I said, folks, ta-da! I fell in love with it and been a crocheter ever since. So it's been a big, big part of my life. Now, have I been consistent at it? No. I had a life. I still have a life, but you know what I mean? I got married. I raised three girls, and thank goodness for the crochet part, because there were many times when they saw a sweater or a hat or gloves or, something kind of trendy. And raising three girls is very expensive, as many of you know. And in this day and age, I just sometimes don't know how families get by with raising one child, let alone three. But anyway, I found that being able to crochet many of the pieces that they wanted came in very handy. And besides, it was always unique because we would choose our own colors, or I was able to weave in something just a little bit different to make it specially yours. You know what I mean? So, yes, I have been a crocheter, I have been a designer, and I believe that's why I took to it and just love it so much. And it's been a great staple in my life. Like I said, being able to make some of my own things, being able to make wonderful gifts, you know, again, one of a kind to pass out to family and friends, whether it was a blanket or just a little corsage, for a prom, um, booties and blankets for new babies that came into the family or for friends, just whatever it was. But anyway, crochet has been a very big part of my life. So, what I want to share with you today is, with all that said, a friend of mine that I hooked up with, of course, back in high school. But every once in a while, we get together, we FaceTime one another, and she and I were working on a project together. We would just sit back talking, and she just asked me. She said, "Maureen, I want to ask you a question." And we always say, "Sure, go ahead." And she looked at me and kind of screwed up her face a little bit. Wait a minute, let me get it just right. Why crochet? Have you ever had anybody ask you that? Why crochet? Or why painting? Why diamond art? Why woodworking? And I thought to myself for a minute, what a weird question. And I said, "What do you mean?" And she said, "Why crochet? Out of all the things that you could have picked to do, why did you choose crochet?" I had to stop and think about it a moment. What about you? Why crochet for you? Or maybe you like watching people crochet and crochet is not your thing. Are you a sketcher? Are you a painter? Are you a cook? Um, what is your passion? Why do you like it? Why do you do it? Hmm. I mean, I could have given her some flippant answer. I mean, I really could. I like it. Why do you like it? You know how it goes whenever you start. You really want to get to the meat, to the bone of why somebody does something. So I have a few reasons as to why crochet for me. And as I go along sharing this with you, would you please in the comments share with me why crochet for you? Many of these you may agree with. I'm trying to get my notes up here because I don't want to be chasing squirrels. Because you know me, those of you that know me, if I start chasing a squirrel, I'm going to chase after it just like a coon dog. So I wrote myself some notes here so I wouldn't be doing that. Um, but why crochet? For me, it's more than just a hobby, folks. It really is. Um, I think my one main reason as to why crochet, it stirs up memories of Grandma teaching me. And every time I sit down with a project, whether it's one I'm just beginning or one I've been working on for a while, I hear my grandma's voice. I do. Words of encouragement like, "You're doing such a good job. Keep going. You're on the right track." Or, "You're not going to let that mistake stay in there, are you? You know better than that. Go back and fix it because 4, 5, 6 rows along, you're going to have to anyway, so stop and let's fix it right now." Just little things. I'm getting goosebumps here talking about her. That's my main reason, is because my grandma taught me. And when you really stop and think about it, well, no matter what your hobby is or your craft that you just, it's your thing, if someone taught it to you, I know my grandma learned from someone in her family, and they learned it from someone from their family, and back and back and back. So I'm not only carrying on my grandma's tradition, her craft, but all of the women and men, if there were any, that taught generations back. So I am part of a long line of people who are carrying on a tradition of crochet. Another reason why I love doing crochet, many of you are going to agree with me on this one too, it's very relaxing. I would come in some days from really bad days of teaching. And folks, those that can leave their work at work, great. But I feel like in the field of teaching, like so many others, it's very hard to do that. It's very hard to walk out of the schoolhouse and stop worrying about that kid that maybe having a problem at home that's keeping them from being their best potential at school, or worrying about the more than 50% in your class as to why was this concept so hard? What can I do to make it better? I mean, there were things like this that I would take home with me every day. And of course, there was always papers to grade, but even on those days when there was papers to grade, before I would go to bed at night, I would pick up a project, and whether I got 1 or 2 rounds or 5 or 10 stitches, it didn't matter. It was a way for me to de-stress, to sit there, work on something, and just let the tension ease out of my body. Did it always work? I'm going to say 80-90% of the time. But at least it released enough tension where I felt like I could, calm my mind down. So for me, it's also been a great stress releaser. Because, stop and think about it. You're sitting there crocheting, that rhythm gets to going. Your mind is focusing on either what you are creating yourself or the pattern that you're following. It allows you to focus in on something else and just let all those other thoughts just kind of be silent for a bit. Let me jump down here. It's also a great way for me to not only release this stress, but to take time for me to have an additional conversation with my God, my Lord. My grandma would do that. And I think that's another reason why, because sometimes I would get so busy during the day that God took a back seat. There's no other way to put it. God just took a back seat. So my crocheting also allowed me that extra one-on-one time to talk with God, to share with Him what I needed to work out for the next day, to release even sometimes anger and frustration over situations that I just couldn't avoid. Or maybe let's just be blunt about it, Maureen. I was great at sticking my nose in where it didn't belong. Especially in the field of teaching. Oh, yes, I cannot share with you the number of times when I offered my opinion, whether it was asked for or not. And so I'd have to sit there and talk to God and just let Him help me work it out. Did I get some scoldings? I'm sure I did. Did I get some affirmations? I'm hoping that I did. But still, the calmness, the ability to focus in on myself and my relationship with God. So for me, crochet allows me to do that as well. And another reason with crochet, you are not just limited to other people's patterns. Stop and think about it just a moment. You see a pattern of a beautiful blanket. Take one, for instance, that I did last year, the Four Seasons Mosaic. Now, she only used certain colors, like I think it was blue and white, throughout the whole project. And don't get me wrong, in mosaic, sometimes just two colors, whether in a high contrast or like a solid and a variegated, they can make some gorgeous blankets. But since this blanket was talking about four different seasons, I wanted color palettes that represented each season for myself. So although I had the pattern, I was able to make it uniquely mine. And I know many of you have done that. So with crochet, we have the opportunity to take someone else's pattern and make it uniquely ours. We also, those of us that are that have branched out into creating on our own pieces. And I'm going to stop here just a moment and encourage all of you. Step out. Take a couple of stitches that you are very, very comfortable in doing. Sketch yourself a scarf and say, you know what? I like the half double crochet and I like the fillet stitch. So I'm going to put those two together. And just count out how many stitches you would need for a fillet stitch. Count out then how many half doubles you would need to have to fit in with that pattern. And looky there, you've already got a scarf. And you can start designing it. Do you want 2 rows of half double crochets and 1 row of fillet? Do you want 10 rows of fillet and maybe just 1 or 2 rows of half doubles, to break it up? Whatever, but I encourage you to step out, design something. It doesn't have to be anything fancy. It doesn't have to have fancy stitches either. Expand your color palette, which is hard for Maureen to do, but I do on occasion step out of my own little comfort zone. But be creative with what you're doing. And you know what? Being creative, that doesn't just apply to crochet or knitting. Sewing, painting, sketching, woodworking, anything that you like to do. Step out of your comfort zone just a little bit. Be creative. See what it is that you can do with it. So that's another reason why I love crochet. It allows me to be an individual, to be able to show what it is that I can do. It also allows me to express throughout different seasons of the year how it is I'm feeling. Maybe that's a good way to put it. Because as many of you know, I do suffer from depression, anxiety. And even though the sun is out there and shining and it's beautiful, I can hear the birds chirping, doing their little birdie thing. And there's a nice breeze. The temperature is wonderful. There might be a cloud hanging over me. And I have to find something that will pull me out of that. So my crochet allows me to calm myself, to work through whatever it is, and be able to enjoy the springtime or the summertime or the fall, and even to enjoy winter, because we all know that winter for many of us brings on winter blues. So for me, again, why crochet? Because it's that great relaxer. It's that great de-stressor. It's also a wonderful way, as I've already said, for me to talk to God and allow Him to remind me I'm not alone and He can help me with that. Let's see. Oh, yes, yes, yes. With crochet, when we get finished with it, isn't it wonderful? Like a blanket when you just complete it. You step back and you think, I started with this hook and let me grab something here. Come on, I got something. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. Here we go. I started with this hook and this yarn, made a few chains. If I'm making a blanket, I'm sure I made more than a few. And the end result is a blanket, whether it be for a baby or a teenager, or not that I've made one yet, but king size bed. To step back and look at what you created. Isn't that awesome? And I know many of you, no matter what your craft is, you started with a piece of wood and a pencil and a saw. And the next thing you know, you made a shelf or a chair or a table. Isn't that wonderful? Those of you that paint, you've squirted some different colors, on your painter's palette. You've got a beautiful blank canvas right there. Take your brush, you dip it in, you might mix a couple of colors together, and the next thing you know, you're just doing a stroke here, stroke there. And the more you play with those colors and transfer them to the canvas, you're starting to create. And then when you're finished, you get to step back and think, I started with a blank canvas, and look what I have now. It's the same for those of us that crochet, knit, sew, quilt. We all start out with just a few simple tools, and by the time we get finished, we have a beautiful project. So that's another reason why I love to crochet. I can sit down with a hook and some yarn and create something. Isn't that wonderful? So that is another reason why I love to crochet. Oh, let's see. I had to check my notes here just a moment. I don't want to leave anything out for you. Yes, yes, yes. It's another reason why I love to crochet. I found others that enjoy it just as much as I do. Now, growing up in a Christian home, and once I learned to crochet, folks, you're going to find this funny, and I do now, but I have got to tell you that once I learned to crochet, and my Grandma was very proud of my progress, she gave me a little book that had shawls in it, and it was a prayer shawl book. And I, at the young age of 14, was allowed into the women's crochet circle at church. My Grandma was so proud. I am not kidding you. My mom too, but my Grandma, oh my goodness, when she walked me in there with my little basket and my yarn and my hook and that little book, sat me down and told me what they were all working on. I got out my little book and started crocheting. I felt like I was in the big leagues now. Now, of course, that was probably a little, what is it? A little haughty-taughty for me to think at the time. And if my Grandma knew I was thinking that, she probably would have given me a give slap on the back of the head. You know what I mean? But I did. And from that little circle, it grew into other circles everywhere that after I got married, and of course, with kids and my husband's work, moving from one place to the other, I always looked for, whether in my church or even just in the community itself, crocheting circles or even knitting crochet circles, craft circles, just where I could get with other people and share my ideas, my designs, look to see what it was that they had. And with the um, growth of the internet, YouTube, social media. There are so many groups now that we can join that have their same passion. And again, I'm going to say not just crochet, but knitters, woodcrafters, painters. I mean, there are groups out there for everyone who loves doing what it is that they love to do and sharing. So for me, it's opened up a community of like minded people where I get to go and sit and talk to someone who understands my language. Now, I only have one of my three daughters who picked up crochet. So it's wonderful to sit with her and we get to talk the same language. Whereas my other two daughters, they love the outcome, they love the projects that they receive. But doing it, I'm going to tell you, yeah, we all know what's coming, don't we? That's an old lady's thing. I'm not old yet. Well, okay. Do I ever think they'll pick it up? Probably not. But you know what? That's okay. I have my one daughter that will carry on the tradition. I even have a grandson that will too, but that's a topic for another podcast. Um, Now, is it expensive to get started in crochet? Not really. I mean, when I started in crochet, I only was able to buy red heart yarn, and my grandma gave me two hooks. They were bait styles, the inline, and I was given a J for the blankets, and I was given an H for everything else. Didn't matter what it was, a hat, a scarf, a shawl, a cardigan, a vest, it didn't matter. The J was for the blankets, and the H was for everything else. So there are so many, many good quality yarns. Um, One I would recommend would be Mainstay. I mean, it's a good acrylic. You can buy a single hook again at Walmart. I mean, and even at our big box stores like Joann's, Hobby Lobby, excuse me, Michael's, they all have good quality, inexpensive tools that will get you started. Now, of course, you're going to need your other things like measuring tapes and scissors and uh, some little tapestry needles. But all of those, again, you can buy in very small quantities to get yourself started. And I don't want to hear that no one in your family crochets, you don't have anyone to teach you, because you do. YouTube is a wonderful place to go to find anything. I tell my husband all the time when he's complaining about not being able to do something or can't figure it out, I tell him, go to YouTube, get in the search bar and say, how to, or is there a video about? And I tell him, if you're wondering, if you have a question, I guarantee you somebody else did too, and they would have made a video about it. You agree? So there is no reason to not be able to learn crochet if it's something that you're interested in. If you're want to learn to knit, there are plenty of channels out there that want to teach you how to knit. Now, find one. I mean, look at several, honestly, look at several crocheters, because not everyone learns the same, not everyone comprehends or hears, exactly the same. So look at several so that you can find one that speaks to you, that their way of talking and showing clicks with your learning style. Don't be intimidated by learning to crochet, because in my opinion it can be done, but it will take practice and it will take time. But it is such a wonderful craft to learn. So whether you are looking for a way to relax, or to express your creativity, or to connect with others, I find that crocheting is one of those ways to do all of them. I'm going to finish here now with just a couple of little what they call to actions. Let me encourage you, beginners, go out and buy yourself a skein of yarn, pick a color that you like, and get yourself a crochet hook. Now, on many of the, well, not many, but all of them, they will tell you here in the back what the weight of the yarn is, and I recommend a 4 or a 5 weight, honestly. And it will tell you what size crochet hook works best with this yarn. Such as for this one, it calls it a medium 4 weight yarn, and that the recommended hook size is an I. So get yourself one skein of yarn, get yourself a hook that's recommended for it, then find yourself a YouTube crochet channel that you can resonate with. Start with the simple stitches. Follow along. And it's not going to look pretty at first. I'm going to tell you that now. It's not going to look pretty, but that's where practice comes in. That's where setting a time, 15 minutes. Just sit down, and even if you want to set that little egg timer or a timer on your phone, do it. But make the time to learn the craft if that's what you're really interested in doing. And of course, I'm going to plug myself. I do have on my own channel a playlist that's about basic stitches. So I encourage you to go over there and look at my playlist of basic stitches. And if you find that I am someone that you can resonate with my teaching style, then watch those. Watch them over and over and over again. And I am more than willing for you to reach out to me through email, or I'm on Messenger. I have a Facebook group, which you'll find the link to down in my description box, where you can reach out there. And I will be more than happy to talk with you one-on-one if crocheting is what you want to get started with. So as I wrap this up, let me just say, I do hope that your reasons for crocheting resonated with many of my reasons for crocheting. But if you have some others, please be sure and leave them down there in the comment box, because I, along with everyone else watching this and reading the comments, would like to know why you like to crochet. Why crochet for yourself? Until next week, please remember, hit the like button if you like the video. If you were new to my channel and this is something that you would like to come back and hear from me every Saturday, be sure you hit the subscribe button, and then also look for the bell that has those little hugs on the side, because it'll let you know every time my podcast and other content is popped up. Thank you so much, each and every one of you, for being here for my very first podcast of the season and of the series, Saturday's Reflections. I hope to see you again next week. But until then, be the light out there in the darkness for someone today, because you never know. Could be your light they need to see. See you next Saturday for another Saturday's Reflection. Bye.